It is just after 6 p.m. on October 5th, 2024, and I'm going to call the City of Iowa City meeting to order. Roll call, please.
Alter.
Here.
Burgess.
Here.
Dunn.
Here.
Harmson.
Here.
Moe.
Here.
Saleh.
Yes.
Teague.
Here. All right. Well, welcome to everyone to your City Hall, and to those that are joining us virtually, welcome as well. We're going to move on to item number 2, which is proclamations. 2A is United Nations Day. Whereas the United Nations was founded in 1945, and whereas United Nations Day on October 24th marks the anniversary of the entry into force in 1945 of the United Charter. And whereas the United Nations and its agencies have reduced poverty and disease, upheld human rights, aided the victims of natural and man-made disasters, established peacekeeping operations around the world, and assisted refugees and other forcibly displaced persons in the Middle East, Sudan, and other war zones. And whereas a constructive partnership between the United States and the United Nations is essential to advancing the UN's mission and helping the U.S. achieve its foreign policy goals. And whereas recent polling indicates that 75% of registered voters believe it is important for the U.S. to maintain an active role in the UN. And whereas one of the purposes of the UN is to promote respect for international law, and the International Court of Justice is the principal UN organ dedicated to this work. And whereas the number of violent conflicts, often in defiance of international law, is at its highest level since World War II, with an estimated of 2 billion people, a quarter of humanity affected by these conflicts. And whereas in recognition of this escalation of violence and disrespect for international law, the Johnson County United Nations Association and the Iowa City Foreign Relations Council are hosting a public event on the purposes and power of the International Court of Justice on Wednesday, October 23rd at 7 p.m. at the Iowa City Public Library in Room A. Now, therefore, I, Bruce Teague, Mayor of Iowa City, do hereby proclaim October 24, 2024 as United Nations Day in Iowa City and urge the public to recommit to the goals stated in the UN Charter. And to receive this proclamation, we have Bijou and her daughter, Naima. And Bijou is with the Johnson County United Nations Association. She's a board member. And let's receive them at this time.
Hello, everyone. My name is Nema Maliabo, and I am a proud member of the UNA USA Johnson County Youth. I would like to take a moment to express my gratitude to the Iowa City Council for this proclamation that recognizes United Nations Day. Thank you, Council, for your support and for highlighting the importance of the United Nations. Your commitment empowers us as youth to take action and make a positive impact to our community. Let us work together to uphold the values of peace and justice that the UN represents. Together, we can inspire, change, and build a brighter future for all. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello, my name is Bijou Maliabo, and I am a member of the Johnson County UNA USA. I'm truly honored to receive this proclamation from the Iowa City City Council in recognition of the United Nations Day. For Iowa City, the United Nations represents more than just an international organization. It embodies our value of diversity, inclusivity, and social justice. The UN's work in promoting peace, addressing climate changes, and advancing human rights aligns closely with our commitment to building a vibrant and equitable community. The UN's efforts to tackle global challenges such as violence, conflict, and war directly impact us, whether through refugee assistance, sustainable development initiatives, or climate change. These issues not only affect our planet, but also shape the life of those in our neighborhood, and families. Iowa City has long welcomed refugees, demonstrating our commitment to compassion and solidarity. By supporting the UN and working toward achieving the Sustainable Development Goals, we reinforce our value and help create a more connected and compassionate world. I invite you all to join us in celebrating the UN Day on October 23rd at 7 p.m. at the Iowa City Public Library. This is a wonderful opportunity to learn more about the UN's vital work and discuss how we as a community can contribute to its mission. This program is in partnership with the Iowa City Foreign Relations. I also encourage each of you to consider becoming a member of the Johnson County UNA USA. Together, we can amplify our voices, engage in meaningful action, and strengthen our commitments to value we cherish. Your involvement can truly make a difference because the world needs the UN and the UN needs us. Thank you for your support, and I look forward in seeing you all. Thank you.
Great. Thank you. Thank you both for coming, and thank you, Peter, also for joining as well. All right, we're going to move on to item number 3 through 7, which is our consent agenda, but we'll be removing items 7A and 7C for separate considerations. Could I get a motion, please?
So moved.
Second, Mo.
Moved by Don, seconded by Mo. Anyone from the public like to address a topic that is on our consent agenda? If you are online, please raise your virtual hand. If you're present, please raise your hand as well. Seeing no one in person or online for any items mentioned in our consent agenda, with the exceptions of items 7A and 7C, we're going to move on to council discussion. Roll call, please.
Alter.
Yes.
Burgess.
Yes.
Dunn.
Yes.
Harmson.
Yes.
Mo.
Yes.
Salah.
Yes.
Teague.
Yes, motion passes 7-0. Could I get a motion to approve consent agenda items 7A and 7C?
So moved. Second.
Point of order.
Moved by Alter, seconded by Salah.
Point of order. Do we have to do those? Can we do those together, or do we have to do them separately?
We can do them together.
Okay, just kind of.
Yep. It's a consent agenda item. Welcome.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor and Council. Ron Konecki, Public Works Director. We were overly optimistic during the agenda development that tonight we would be able to set the public hearings for the Bradford Drive water main replacement and the high service pump replacement projects. Unfortunately, the plans and specs are not complete, and we were not able to put them on file today. Tonight, we request you vote these items down instead of deferring the items because the items were setting the public hearings for your next meeting. We will bring these items back before you on a future agenda. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions for Ron? All right. Anyone from the public like to address those two items? If you're online, raise your virtual hand. Seeing no one online or in person, council discussion. Roll call, please.
Burgess.
No.
Dunn.
No.
Harmson.
No.
Mo.
No.
Salah.
Oh.
Teague.
No.
Alter.
No.
Motion fails 0-7. All right. Can I get a motion to accept correspondence, item 6K?
So moved, Mo.
Burgess. Second, Burgess.
All right, moved by Mo, seconded by Burgess. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes 7-0. We are on to item number 8, which is an opportunity for community comment. And this is for items that are not on our agenda. So if you're wanting to address an item that is not on our agenda and you're in the city hall here, will you please raise your hand? Seeing no one that want to talk on an item that is not on our agenda, I'm going to move on to our next item, which is 9, which is Planning and Zoning Matters. 9A, Zoning Code Amendment, Redemption Centers. Ordinance amending Title 14 Zoning Code to allow redemption centers in commercial and industrial zones. I'm going to open the public hearing and welcome Danielle.
Thank you, Mayor. Danielle Sitzman, Neighborhood Development Services. Can anybody tell me, or let's just play a quick quiz, what does the state of Iowa have in common with California, Connecticut, Hawaii, Maine, Massachusetts, Michigan, New York, Oregon, and Vermont? I think this agenda item is probably a giveaway to that, but in 1978, the state of Iowa was one of 10 of these states to enact a beverage containers control law, also commonly known as a bottle bill. In these states, 10 states, laws allow retailers to collect a deposit at the time of sale of certain products and for consumers to receive their deposit back when returning the empty beverage container to a store or redemption center. In 2022, Iowa's bottle bill was amended by the state to significantly increase the handling fee for retailers and redemption centers from 1 cent to 3 cents per container. This was aimed at incentivizing more redemption centers to open and operate within the state, and it was part of a Senate file which also allowed many retailers to opt out of accepting returned bottles and cans under certain conditions. As a result of this change in state law, a current operating redemption center in our city has come forward and asked for consideration of a change in their business plan operations that would improve and expand their services in our community, modernizing their vending machines and automating a lot of their processes. So regardless of any opinion on the policy set by the state about bottle bills, our local zoning codes do play a role in the ease with which these transactions occur in our community. So the proposed code change under consideration tonight is to address redemption centers in light of, as I said, a currently operating redemption center, the Can Shed, asking for consideration of that. They aim to expand their services, improve collection, and provide easier access to those services. Our current regulations are set up in a way that are a little bit out of date with the trend in current operating and the technology that's available to collect cans and bottles. It classifies these types of uses as industrial uses. It includes language about very heavy processes, industrial processes, really addressing recycling at the point at which the material is actually recycled rather than the point at which previous to that it might have been collected for a deposit. It addresses redemption centers as standalone, classifies them as waste-related use categories, and with this interpretation really only allows these types of uses to operate in industrial zones. In reviewing the proposed business plan from the Can Shed, it became apparent to staff that classifying redemption centers as they propose them as a very intense industrial use comparable to a landfill or, like I said, an actual recycling facility did not accurately reflect the intended use or how they propose to operate in the future. So staff agreed that the zoning code should be updated to respond to changing conditions and address a new recycling business model. To do so, we first began by reviewing our vision and goal statements of the comprehensive plan, as we do with all zoning code text changes. Those really direct our efforts. The comprehensive plan does have vision and goal statements related to fostering a resilient economy, promoting a diversity of business types in the community through having a diversity of businesses, hopefully to respond to changes over time as they occur. We do have goals and strategies addressing retention of existing businesses with the opportunity for growth of those businesses, encouraging a mix of independent, locally owned businesses such as the Can Shed. Addressing redemption centers in our zoning code to allow them in more zoning districts than they would currently be regulated as would make it easier for redemption center uses to locate in Iowa City and to retain those uses for those who wish to pursue them as such in an altered business model, and it would be consistent with our comprehensive plan. The comprehensive plan does also focus on responsible use of natural resources and energy, which of course recycling is a key component of. And by allowing redemption centers in more areas of the community, our community members would have increased access and opportunities to contribute to waste reduction efforts in support of the comprehensive plan. The proposed amendment would also help further these goals by promoting waste reduction and contributing to the community's recycling efforts, I said, which are a key component of the climate action and adoption plan of the city. City sustainability and resource management staff also participated in this code analysis and investigation with urban planning staff and helped in the preparation of the proposed code before you tonight. As staff surveyed the best practices across the country in those other 9 states that have bottle laws, we focused on states that had already had experience addressing this kind of business model. And we found that the state of Oregon and its local cities therein provided direct experience, having already implemented code changes to address similar types of operations in the community. In general, the state of Oregon takes an approach, and in their local jurisdictions, as considering this more of a service use rather than an industrial use, as our current code currently identifies it. And we did drill down to specific cities and their specific ways in which they were defining redemption centers and developed codes to address their operations. At the local jurisdictional level, this research demonstrated a range of different regulatory approaches. Staff found that there were 2 main approaches taken by local jurisdictions, either to categorize the redemption as an existing use or create an entirely new category to try to describe what was actually occurring and regulate it in that manner. When we looked at the specific standards that these cities were implementing, we also included Des Moines in our investigation since it was a little bit closer to home. We found that Des Moines was a lot more like how the city of Iowa City currently thinks of redemption centers as an industrial use, feeling that that really didn't fit the proposed business use. We did look at the standards that the other cities were using when they were considering these as commercial uses and the best way to make sure that they fit into existing neighborhoods and into their communities. Analyzing the specific standards of redemption centers helped us envision additional uses that we propose in our ordinance tonight. So therefore, in this ordinance, staff is proposing several things. First, to create a new category to identify a redemption center, to define it, and then to place it in the table of allowable uses for commercial and industrial uses, as we do with any time we categorize a use. Also creating specific provisional use standards for redemption center to ensure that they are compatible and addressing certain features like parking that are common for all uses to have identified with them. So in identifying a redemption center is a use categorized as an indoor facility that collects empty bottles and cans from consumers, distributes payment of the refunded value of the deposit, and may utilize some minor compressing machines. These are not the heavy industrial processes that would be involved in taking a material, perhaps shredding it, repackaging it, and sending it off for actual recycling. This is simply what you hear happening inside a reverse vending machine when you hear that crunch. Really just maximizing the amount of cans that can be collected at one time. There are some accessory uses typical to a redemption center, things like the office for the staff and the parking. Also, exceptions would be written to still identify those actual true industrial waste-related uses and keep them in the appropriate districts. Talking about the zones in which this new redemption center classification could be allowed, we show here the table of various industrial uses and commercial uses. The P means permitted by right, and those are still happening in our industrial zones. They would be simply permitted to continue to operate or establish in industrial zones. The change here would be to allow the PR designated lines in the commercial zones that we have them designated here. That means provisional. That means they could also go into commercial districts if they met a set of certain specific standards. There are 2 commercial zones here where they are permitted, the commercial highway or highway commercial and intensive commercial. Those are 2 commercial districts that already allow outdoor storage, which is kind of the key component of being a redemption center, occurring inside a building. Allowing them to be permitted in commercial zones just simply follows the base standards that are already allowed in those commercial zones where outdoor storage would be allowed for other uses as well. The specific standards then that when something is provisionally allowed in a commercial district that staff is proposing is a limit on the overall square footage of the operation, and that outdoor storage of materials is just simply not allowed. These uses help to maintain the character and scale and intensity of the use to ensure that they're compatible with other things happening in commercial districts. And then for parking requirements, the proposed ratio is 1 per 1,000 square foot of floor area, no bicycle parking required. And then we did look at anticipated impacts. So taking a look at the map where these zoning districts that would now allow redemption centers are, and then whether they would be allowed either as provisional or permitted use, kind of highlighting the two different colors here. So these are areas of the city that are already zoned commercial, where an additional service industry like a redemption center would be appropriate and could occur. So as far as code adoption process, our existing zoning code, the last time it was completely readopted was 2005. These are standards that are changing since then, creating, like I said, the new definition and a new use category for redemption center. Would not be anticipated that any property necessarily is being rezoned to a commercial district to allow this. The can shed's simply looking at existing commercial properties where they might like to operate. So based on a review of the relevant criteria and best practices, staff recommended approval of the zoning code text change before you tonight. And at their September 18th, 24 meeting, the Planning and Zoning Commission concurred with this recommendation and unanimously recommended approval. I'm happy to answer questions if you have them. And also the can shed is here tonight if you'd like to speak with them.
Okay.
As I understand it, Danielle, if we wanted to, let's say, discuss bicycle parking, that being a textual code amendment would have to go back through planning and zoning as well. Is that right?
I'm going to let Eric decide that one. I will say, as far as bike parking, that did stand out to me as well, so I just refreshed my memory about where we do and don't require bicycle parking. There are other commercial zones that don't require bicycle parking. They're typically uses that probably don't lend themselves to arriving on a bicycle, so are animal-related uses, so like your vet, or things that are simply vehicle-oriented, like quick vehicle servicing. They don't require bicycle parking. Building trade contractor shops don't require bike parking. And then if we do require bike parking, I'll just put it out there, there's a range of the amount of it, anywhere from 5 to 25% of the vehicle parking expressed as bicycle parking. So there's a wide range. I don't know if staff felt like this particular use wasn't the kind of use that would lend itself to needing bicycle parking. Generally, we support bicycle use and parking as a key component of being able to easily use your bike to go places. So they'd have employees who might want to arrive on a bike, for example. But as to whether if we add in bicycle parking, whether that needs to be a substantive reconsideration or not, I don't know.
As council is aware, I've become a little more gun shy, feeling like I was a little aggressive at the last meeting about calling something non-substantive. For that reason, I think I would probably want to send it back if that was a change you, as a council, wanted to make.
And just to highlight that, one of the reasons people don't ride their bikes to some of these commercial areas is you can't park there. And having lived in this community, there are individuals who collect and redeem cans on bicycle that I've seen regularly. So having an opportunity to lock that up, maybe the folks from the can shed, if they can just hear that and consider doing that voluntarily, that would be wonderful. But I appreciate our city attorney's opinion as well.
In our existing zoning code, can you walk through some of the standard buffering requirements that we'd see in all these zones? I mean, shrubs and setbacks is going to...
Screening standards?
Yeah, screening standards.
I'm not sure if I could do that off the top of my head. Those screening standards tend to be for parking lot areas, so we're not proposing to change any of those. So if a commercial zone requires screening of those areas, it would also, this use wouldn't trigger any special screening.
Okay.
You could imagine this use being in a strip center and a variety of uses coming and going from those tenant spaces and not impacting the parking lot.
Good. And then would this allow, I've seen in other communities, they have drive-through can redemption. Would our zoning code allow that?
I haven't seen that. It's intended to occur entirely inside the building. If you want to drive through, you'd have to get a special exception for a drive-through, and I'm not sure of all the standards where a special exception is even allowed. There's some zoning districts, like neighborhood commercial, the only types of drive-throughs you can have are for a bank and I think one other type of use, so you couldn't have a restaurant drive-through. So I think the possibility of a drive-through might exist, but it would go through an extra special exception review at the Board of Adjustment, and they would look at a site plan and take into consideration the impacts at that point.
Okay.
I don't know specifically, though, which of these zoning districts do and don't allow drive-throughs.
Thank you. All right, anyone from the public like to address this topic? If you're online, please raise your virtual hand. Welcome. There is a sign-in sheet right there, and you'll be able to sign in and give us your name and the city you're from. And this is also an opportunity where the public can speak to the council, but we cannot engage or debate until the appropriate time for council discussion. But welcome.
Okay, thank you. My name's Troy Willard. I'm the owner of the Can Shed, here to kind of see where, what the questions may be and stuff and how we can address that. Just from that conversation, I certainly recognize that we do have regular customers who bicycle and a lot. So I think that would be a value-added thing for us to have some type of accommodation for that. Outside of that, we're excited about the opportunity to move into some better space that has more visibility, more access, and again allows us to bring some of the latest, greatest technology in the redemption world to Iowa City. So,
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else like to address this topic? Seeing no one in person or online, I'm going to close.
Before you close the hearing?
Oh, yeah?
Yep.
So before I close the public hearing, is council inclined to vote with P&Z? All right, I'm going to close the public hearing. Could I get a motion to give first consideration, please?
So moved. Done.
Second, Harmson.
Council discussion.
I think that this makes life easier for residents in our community trying to take back cans. I'm dating myself here, but I remember as a kid what it was like before we had this bottle law and the amount of trash and cans that would show up in highway ditches all over the place. More recently, I was in Kansas City a year or two ago, and they don't have this, and I saw that again. So making this easier, making it more convenient for residents of our city under the new Iowa law, I think is a big win. So.
I'd just like to say, I think it's be great too if the people show up with things that can't be redeemed, if we make it as easy as possible for people to get that recycled anyway. I know sometimes you have that extra water bottle that doesn't have it's not worth a nickel, but being able to make that available for recycling would be great.
Really support the work you do, and thank you for being here.
Supports climate action. All right, roll call, please.
Dunn?
Yes.
Harmson?
Yes.
Moe?
Yes.
Sella?
Yes.
Teague?
Yes.
Alter?
Yes.
Burgess?
Yes.
Motion passes 7-0. 9B, zoning code amendment, tobacco sales-oriented retail uses. Ordinance amending Title 14 and Title Zoning Code to address tobacco sales-oriented retail uses. This is the first consideration. Can I get a motion, please?
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Don, seconded by Salah. And anyone, well, before we go there, we'll have our city attorney kind of start us on this item.
Well, as council will recall, we discussed this item last meeting, and there was a change made at the meeting for the grandfather rights upon a cessation of sales, went from 90 days to 1 year. And I opined that that would be a non-substantive change and thus could move forward. I have since, as council is aware, reconsidered that following the 3-2 vote on that motion and some public opposition. It's become clear that this is a substantive matter. And also to, just out of an abundance of caution, in the event that there's ever litigation in this matter, I thought it'd be best that we treat it as a first reading. That said, the ordinance before you is as amended, and there have been no other changes since the last time, so I really don't have anything else to report.
Okay. Anyone have any questions for Eric on council?
I did have a question on, especially because it was a 3-2 vote and in light of some of the additional information, what would it take or what's the process if the council wanted to either go back to the 90 days, consider doing that, and or looking at a different number that is that is not 1 year or 90 days?
I'll take those two in turn. So to return to 90 days, that would be a motion to reconsider because you're basically undoing the vote that took place at the last meeting. While as Robert's rules allow for any member who was on the prevailing side plus any member who was absent to make that motion, the council rules limit a motion to reconsider to just those who are on the prevailing side. So those, any of those three council members who are on the prevailing side of that motion to amend to make the motion. After the motion is made, if there is a motion made, any council member, regardless of whether they're on the prevailing side or not, could second the motion. So that's to go back to 90. If it is the will of council or if there's a motion to change it to anything other than 90, then that would just be a fresh motion to amend. Any council member could make it, any council member could second it, and it would be a motion just like the last time, that is 4 votes to prevail. I shouldn't say like last time, because last time we had 5 members, and so it only took 3 votes. This time we have 7 members present, so 4 votes would be required to pass the motion.
Further question, if there was a successful motion to reconsider that was accepted and it went back to the 90 days, would this be considered a second consideration
This would be a second consideration?
as amended?
I would say that the next one would be a first consideration.
Okay,
This is motion to reconsider.
That is, it would be a third first consideration.
okay. Oh, okay.
I know that that sounds odd, but
Yes.
because of my ruling that that would be a substantive change, in turn, we would need to go back to a first reading at the next council meeting.
I get it, you don't want us to get sued.
And just,
I will note to that, of course, council, having had by that point held several meetings and had many opportunities for the public to weigh in, could certainly collapse if that was the will of council.
And just as a reminder, what's the current status of issuing tobacco permits? We still have the moratorium?
Oh, yeah, there's still a moratorium in place, and that runs until December 31st, unless it's lifted earlier by council. Based on earlier discussions with council, the plan is for us to submit that, the lifting of the moratorium to coincide with the application of whatever ultimate ordinance you folks pass.
Thank you.
Great. All right. No other questions for Eric? All right. Anyone from the public like to address this topic? If you're in person, please raise your hand. Yep. Please, welcome. There is a sign-in sheet at this desk where you can sign in. And also, once you start speaking, give us your name and and the city you're from. If you are online, please raise your virtual hand.
Hello, my name is
Welcome.
Bodha Gautam. I'm from the city of West Burlington, Iowa.
Okay.
And
And you'll have up to 3 minutes.
Sure.
But go right ahead.
We signed the purchase agreement for the Mormon Trek, all come and go. And we are moving forward to close the deal. And I'm here to make sure that we are redoing that property, making the convenience store with the gas. So we want to make sure that as long as we follow all the rules and regulations, whether we'll be able to obtain the tobacco and liquor license on that one. So that's my question.
Yeah, and we won't be able to answer, but you can speak to the council at this time.
Right. So this zoning things I read, so I thought maybe it's a good idea to come here and present what is. So that location been there for 40 years with the convenience stores, and our plan is to continue the same way, to redo the property, make more convenience store than the gas, but down the road we will work to get the gas station too. But the beginning will be the gas station, and our request, we want to know that whether there will be the license obtainable down the road until when the lifted end of the 31st of December or something. So we want to get a little more information. That's what I'm here for. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else like to address this topic?
Can we ask them questions?
You can, I'll just, when the council deliberates, council may ask either staff to respond, or the council can, follow up with the speaker
Okay, thank you.
during our deliberations
Thank you.
only. Yes. Yes, please, come. Welcome. Please state your name and city you're from. You have up to 3 minutes.
Hello, everyone. This is Dipesh Gautam, living here, Kelowna, Iowa, doing a convenience store business about a decade now, and we together try to get that property and roll in. But while we knows that we come down to see applications process in the City Hall last week, and CU was telling us that happening all discussion here in City Hall today. So we are here to ensure that we are going to the right direction or not. So basically, the location was serving that neighborhood since 40 years. So we are thinking that we can do same thing by one more time again. Thank you.
Thank you. Yep. Anyone else like to address this topic? Seeing no one in person or online, council discussion.
Eric, can you clarify, did we have the regulation set to parks too?
I'm sorry, I missed the last part.
So the proposal, is it set to parks as well, or is it just schools?
Just schools and university property, not parks.
Okay, cool. So I don't want to say anything definitively, but I looked up the property, and if you guys could confirm, are you talking about 955 Mormon Trek? Yes. Okay. So just looking off of the GIS data, it looks like you guys are over 1,000 feet from West High School and way over 1,000 feet from any other educational property. So would it be fair to say that what they're trying to achieve would be acceptable?
Actually, they are within 500 feet of another tobacco retailer, I believe Fairway and perhaps Hardig Drug. I would need to check, but I believe that they are within the buffer zone, and so they would only be able to do that business that they're describing with grandfather rights in effect.
Okay.
And I'm happy to follow up with these two individuals if they'll leave their contact information with me or with Mr. Lehman here, if that would be easier. I can follow up with them.
Sure. Okay. Thank you.
Any other comments?
But specifically about this property or about the ordinance more in general?
I mean, it's council discussion at this time.
Well, I guess, I don't know if any of the counselors who voted in favor of the year are willing to reconsider at this time, changing it from 90 to a year.
Oh.
They had changed it already from 90, changing it back to 90 days. Any of the three that voted for that, I'm not saying you have to, I'm just asking if
Yeah.
that is, because that would guide where I go next.
Yeah. I would personally appreciate the discussion just because I am on the 90 days train personally. But yeah, it is within your rights.
I guess, I've shared in multiple meetings the rationale for that. If there's a specific question that someone has, I would be more than willing to answer that. What I will say is, when I step back and look at the entire thing that we're doing with the tobacco sales, I mean, if you want to restart, if this isn't a, if you want to, have some more conversations, I think we started this with some hopes of change in one area within the community, and then it spread across the city. And there are some unintended consequences that I think go along with this, entire blanket of what we're doing with this. So it's not perfect, but I think it is a public safety issue, a public safety concern. That's why we're going down this route. But there are other things that I think in the future we may want to consider, depending on how things are going. Right now, we just say all tobacco sales, but there are some places where we know their tobacco sales are probably not the, predominant of their business. And so they're being, everybody's in one big bubble in a way. Whereas I think if we were to, do further consideration, it may be worthwhile talking about, should we just have this blanket where anyone that wants to sell tobacco, whether that's 10% of their business or 90% of their business, they're held to the same standards. And I'm not exactly sure that when we started this conversation that we intended that to be the outcome, but it is the outcome. And there are people being, there's going to be some consequences that were not intentional. Tobacco is what it is. I'm making no judgment call, even though I might have stated that it wasn't, the best, but people do it. But at this point, I am comfortable, not recanting the 90 days. I think there are more important things that we can talk about if we want to relook at starting this back over kind of for reconsideration or anything.
So if I'm hearing you correctly, Mayor, there's actually two separate kind of streams of thought. One is about the distance between buildings and like the percentages of sales towards tobacco, and whether it's fair to just do a one-size-fits-all in terms of that. The other then is about the timing of the extension, right?
Yes.
And you're still proposing a year for that. One of the things that I had heard, or have heard from constituents, is that while the impulse or the intention is to make this standard with alcohol licensing, and that it could take a year for the alcohol license, there's some unintended consequences there as well. And Eric, I think you also have been drawn into this conversation. Can you talk a little bit about where there might be confusion between, is it usage and the permitting itself? Can you please explain that?
Sure. So as part of the ordinance before you, there are 4 ways a property can lose grandfather rights that presently exist. The first is if the tobacco permit is revoked. That would be because they've sold to minors repeatedly, such that the state code would call for the revocation of their tobacco permit. The second is if the tobacco permit lapses or is discontinued for a period of 60 days or more. Recall that tobacco permits are issued on an annual basis for 1 year they expire on June 30th of every year. The third is that tobacco sales use ceases for a period of 1 year or more. That's what we've been talking about,
right.
90 days, changed to 1 year at the last meeting. And that was explained to allow for renovations or the kind of thing that might take longer than 90 days, I think was part of the rationale for that. But if they maintain their tobacco permit but just aren't selling, that would be the exception, or that would be the consideration or variable at play. Finally, if there's been a change of use, that is, if they sell tobacco today but they open a T-shirt shop tomorrow, they've changed the use and now their grandfather rights are gone.
Thank you.
Sure.
And you did say, I may get it, is it June 3rd or June 30th?
Oh, June 30th, I'm sorry if I misspoke.
And that is a static date. It is an annual static date.
Yeah, that's set by state code. Unlike liquor licenses, which go from a year from when you applied, so they're throughout the year, tobacco is one time.
So
they all
anybody
expire.
who is selling tobacco knows that it has to be done by June 30th.
They would all have to know that, yes.
Okay.
I guess something that would just be helpful for the whole council. Since a number of us weren't here, where are people at? I know it would still take an action of someone who prevailed in the previous discussion, but in terms of just like the general support, where are folks at? I'm at 90, personally.
On the previous meeting, I voted no, so I was with Councilor Harmson in the negative.
Negative meaning keeping it at 90.
Keeping it at 90.
Retaining 90.
Honestly, I was one of the positives, and I would be okay going back to a motion to reconsider.
Are you making that motion?
Yes.
I'll second.
So we have a motion by Alter, seconded by Harmson. Well, we can continue discussion, but it's on this item, on that part. So what I
On
was
this motion, yeah.
Yes, on the motion. So what I would say is the 1 year, the rationale that I gave was for really current owners. And if there is a renovation that's happening, that while that's happening, there's things happening taking longer that are beyond their control. 90 days is not a lot of time in any construction at all. We have all types of construction here. So if a business owner, went through and wanted to renovate something, now they have to do it within 90 days so that they can resell the tobacco sales. I do wonder if, and maybe this is a question for Eric, I think the concern that maybe this council has in the example that we just, well, I'll not say that, but maybe the concern that this council has is, or would it be more palatable if it was only for the current owner to see sales for up to 1 year or up to 6 months, or the council doesn't care because, or not, I'll recant that, or that doesn't matter to the council, because I do think there is going to be a time where this council will have to reconsider a stable person, someone that has been in this community a long time, that is going to go through a major renovation, and this is going to be a sticking point, and this will come before this council, and they're going to have to reconsider making an exception where there has been other folks that have not came to council, didn't make a consideration, and that business, current owner or not, but in this new example that I'm giving, current owner would lose their business essentially, because if it's 100% tobacco sales or 90% tobacco sales, if they can't have that, then they're going to be shut down. So that's I don't know if there's any thoughts of limiting, just like we did above, for the distance and separation, how they spelled out how they are going to measure the 500 feet. Talk about a straight line from the nearest property line. Do we want to just go
Percentage of sales.
Yeah. Do we want to go one step further with the tobacco sales oriented uses ceases from a period of 1 year or more? Well, I don't know if it should say more.
Well, it wouldn't be or more. That's the 1 year. It's the max.
Yeah, here it says or more, but it needs to be changed.
That's correct.
Well, no, that's correct, because it's ceased for, the maximum
yes,
time you
I get
could.
it. Yes, yep, understood. So that's my only thing. But I'm not, I'm not going to stand on the hill and die talking about this. But I do think for business owners, it is important that they have some latitude, and we don't want to make it where they need to come back to the city to make a special request. It will happen. It's going to happen.
Mayor, before you or anyone else jumps in, I want to respond to one part of what you said, in that speaking about referencing or giving different treatment to a particular owner. This is a zoning ordinance, and so in zoning, we're more concerned with the use than the user. In fact, we have to focus on the use and not the user. So I would not think it would be appropriate to treat users differently. We have to focus on the use.
Got it. Understood and well respected. I think the reason that came to mind is because we were first considering a limit.
Yeah, a permit cap.
A permit cap, and so that's the rationale. But if that is not something that we should be thinking about is more of the use, then that claim doesn't stand. So, yeah.
Can get someone like, let me understand, if somebody has a license and they decide to do a construction, but the license is still under effect, right?
Yes, the permit.
The permit, I mean.
Yeah, no, that's fine. The permit lasts for a year. Now, folks can turn in a permit to get a refund if they so choose, but the permit for the whole year only costs $100. So it's been the experience.
That's what I mean.
Yeah.
If somebody have, for example, license for 1 year, and they have a construction, and that construction take 1 year, it's still they are not gonna. They already renew it. They lost $100. And maybe by the year over, even the license, their permit almost expired, they can renew it while they're doing renovation, right? They
Yes.
can still come and say, I want to renew my license even though I did not finish my renovation yet.
Right. I mean, to use the example of 955 Mormon Trek, that's a business that's been closed for months and months and months, but they still have a valid tobacco
They renew
permit
it
because they
every
renewed.
month. Okay, then what's the problem?
Well, because there's two different standards. The losing or allowing your tobacco permit to lapse, that's set at 60 days. You can't allow that for more than 60 days without losing your grandfather rights. Whereas the tobacco sales, that speaks to the use, that is the ceasing making tobacco sales. And so you could have your tobacco permit for a whole year and never sell a pack of cigarettes.
And
so
all
that's-
you lose is a $100.
That's right. You wouldn't really lose anything. You just, I guess that's opportunity cost or something. But yes,
Yeah.
you would have wasted, I guess, the $100. But my point is that you would not offend, H-1B. That is, you did not allow your tobacco permit to lapse more than 60 days. It's still renewed. It's still good. But if they didn't sell tobacco for more than a year at present, then they would still lose their grandfather rights. Otherwise, you could imagine a hypothetical in which you had a business that was closed for 10 years, but they kept renewing, the permit every year for $100 a year and could thus retain grandfather rights for that whole 10 years.
Meaning then if it's grandfather rights, it's that allows them to sell to somebody else, correct? Is that what you're?
Whatever it is.
Oh, none of this
Or
would
whatever.
prevent anyone from selling the property. The
Right.
question is just whether the
I mean, that it would
subsequent use.
transfer over.
Exactly.
Yeah, whether the use could.
That's what I meant.
Yeah, right.
Regardless of owner.
That's why, Mayor, I'm just thinking, like, now to me, it doesn't matter if 90 days or 10 days or anything, as long as you have the opportunity to renew while you are in the...
And Mayor Pro Tem, there's a specific date once a year that it expires. So
Okay.
they know.
They know
They
that
have
our
to- it
license
doesn't-
will expire January
Yes.
1st.
Or
So before
June
that,
thir-
we can go and
June
renew it
30th.
even though we are in construction and we're
Yes.
not doing anything.
Yes.
So I think here, don't you think the 90 days is not even important now?
Well, no,
Or
it
the 1
is. I
year?
mean, if you imagine, that instead of a year, it was 2 days for that part. Then if you had any kind of, we're closing up shop for a week to go on vacation to Florida. Well, now you just lost your grandfather rights because you were ceasing use for more than 2 days in this hypothetical. So you have to consider both of those two numbers. They're treated separately and have to be considered separately. So you could very well imagine a circumstance in which someone maintains their tobacco permit throughout the whole period of time, but loses their grandfather rights because they stop selling tobacco right now for more than a year. If they stop for more than a year, they would lose their rights, even if their tobacco permit was renewed every year.
Can we talk about the effective date of this then? So the ordinance is written to be effective after the final passage, but there is a moratorium. So for a new user, or for someone who wants to initiate a use
Right.
where there hasn't been use for, whether it was 90 days or a year, but they have a valid permit, what's their situation?
Well, let me first start with the timing. So the ordinance, whatever council eventually passes, would take effect upon publication. So that's going to be a little bit after the third reading, unless there's a collapse to bring it sooner. But if your question, I want to make sure I understand your hypothetical. Your question is whether someone who currently has both a permit and is actively engaged in the sale of tobacco could sell to someone else, or are you
No,
saying?
the use has stopped. So under, I'm just trying to get to the 90 days versus a year, right?
Sure.
So under HC, if the sale use, let's just say has stopped for more than a year, but they
Right.
do have a valid permit, when does this restriction on the grandfathering kick in?
Well, if I understand your hypothetical right away, and the first
Does it
part.
look back and say, how long have you not been selling?
Well,
or does it
that's-
begin at the
there's two-
effective date of the ordinance?
There's two parts of it. First is kind of a retrospective versus prospective application of the ordinance, and that's subject to some argument in statutory interpretation. However, if I understand your hypothetical correctly, the definition of those who would maintain, would have grandfather rights in the first place are those who are a tobacco sales oriented use now.
Okay.
And so that definition is any retailer actively engaged in the sale of tobacco products, cigarettes, et cetera, pursuant to a tobacco permit. So if there's a business right now, as of the passage of the ordinance, that is not actively engaged in the sale of tobacco products, our office's opinion is they don't have grandfather rights.
Okay, regardless of the 90 days or the year?
Right.
Okay, that's what I was getting at. Thank you.
Okay, sure.
One more technical question for City Attorney. What is the, assume that we pass this as it's currently written 1 year, what are the steps for modifying that in the future? If the council had an appetite to revisit that, is it another 3 hearings, or is it a simple?
It would be a trip to the Planning and Zoning Commission and then 3 readings.
Okay.
And since I missed last meeting, what was P&Z's recommendation on this?
They recommended passage. I believe it was 5-1 or something. There was one dissenting vote.
On the 90 days?
It was.
Did they reconsider with the 1 year?
They have not opined on the 1 year.
Okay.
When it was before them, it was 90 days because that's what council ultimately decided to send to them in a draft.
Okay, so they approved the 90 days 5-1, we think? Or
Yes.
It passed?
It passed. There was one dissenting vote.
And they did
Right.
not talk about the 1 year anyway, because we opened the conversation about the 1 year after it came from the planning and
Sure.
zoning here. Yeah.
Sure.
I have just one more clarification question. So if someone purchased a property or purchased a business today, and let's say this was active with the 500-foot rule, but will that new business owner be grandfathered in to allow that sale?
Under this hypothetical, are they actively engaged in the tobacco sales now?
No.
Then there's no grandfather rights to protect. And so
There's-
if they're within the 500-foot buffer, they would not be allowed to get a tobacco permit.
What do you mean by active now? Do you mean like they have permit, but they are not selling tobacco for some reason right now? Or you mean like they don't sell tobacco before, or I don't know.
My understanding of the hypothetical posed by the mayor was that they have a permit but are not actively engaged in the sale of tobacco right now.
Okay.
And I think the question is, if that business were sold to an entity who
Another
wants
entity.
to continue, wants to also use it for tobacco sales.
Wants to begin tobacco
Yes, wants to
sales at that
begin-
property.
Yes.
Correct.
Is that what?
Yeah, so.
Would
so-
that-
Yeah, so would they wouldn't be able to, if a school is within 500 feet, they wouldn't be able to get a tobacco license.
Or if they're within 500 feet of another retailer being the other
Correct.
part of it. You're right. We would not recognize grandfather rights on their part.
Okay.
This is complicated. If like somebody, but because you said like 1 year, if you will lose your permit if you are not active selling for 1 year, right?
That's one of the 4 ways you can lose your grandfather rights, yes.
But if I was not, like, I'm not selling tobacco right now, I have a permit, and I want to sell my business, is I'm not selling tobacco for less than 1 year. I'm selling my business to someone. They are not going to get the grandfather?
Well, right, because the whole nature of grandfather rights is protecting present uses. That is, you're presently engaging in this behavior that was legal at the time that you began doing it, but then there was a change in zoning laws that made it illegal, made it non-conforming, a legal non-conforming use. But in the hypothetical that I think we're discussing at present, if you've got, I'll say, a location that is not actively engaged in the sale of tobacco products, then they do not have grandfather rights because they're not currently doing so. They don't fall under the definition of a tobacco sales-oriented use as proposed in this ordinance.
But because, I mean, like, they did not selling it because they have, for example, construction or anything, less than 1 year. Not because they don't sell it because.
Well, I mean, I'm trying to think of how, for example, if there was a permittee who 3 months ago closed down they were selling tobacco, they got a permit, and they were actively engaged, and they closed down for 3-4 months throughout the process of us working through this ordinance, but then, begin again before you folks passed your ultimate bill, then I would say, yeah, if by the time this bill passes, they had active use, then they have grandfather rights, and, those rights would be protected, subject to these 4 exceptions that are outlined below. Is that responsive to your question?
Yeah, it is, but even though if they close because there is a reason to close, not because they want to run out, they don't want to do the business anymore, but they close because they want to fix their store or anything. That's why they hold. They are not selling currently, but their intention is to continue. But after that, they decide to sell this business to somebody else.
Yeah, this is getting a little tricky. I'm feeling like I'm going out on a limb a little farther than I feel comfortable on the fly. I would need to think about that one. I mean,
yeah.
I think your question ultimately is when, and you tell me if I'm wrong, when is the ultimate point of time that matters insofar as whether they have grandfather rights? Is that essentially your question?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'll need to give a little more thought to that.
Question. Okay. What constitutes actively selling?
Selling. I don't know how to answer that
So,
question.
so if someone sold a pack of tobacco, cigarettes or whatever, that's considered active sale.
Yeah.
Does it have to be like doing it every day, or is it within a period of time?
A period of time is what
Well,
we're
yeah, I mean,
discussing.
if they sell 1 pack of cigarettes every month, then that wouldn't offend the, ceased sales timeline here. I know that would seem to be, I don't know, pro forma or some, I don't know what, or tokenism, but I would probably say that they preserve their rights.
Okay.
Any other comments on this? And for clarity, this is the reconsideration of returning back to 90 days. So that's what we're going to be voting on. If no other comments, roll call, please.
Harmson?
Yes.
Mo?
Yes.
Salah?
No.
Teague?
No?
Alter?
Yes. Yes.
Burgess?
Yes.
Dunn?
Yes.
Motion passes 4-2, and we are back to.
Was it 5-2?
5-2.
Oh, 5-2. I can't count tonight. All right, 5-2. And we are back, so that has been reverted back to 90. And so at this point, we're going to have to, it's going to be a new first consideration.
It'll be a new first consideration next month, or next meeting.
So do we take further action at this point?
Defer?
No, I would just defer until the next meeting.
So moved.
Second.
So moved by Dunn, seconded by Mo to defer this item until November 4th. And we'll do a roll call, please.
Mo?
Yes.
Salah?
Yes.
Teague?
Yes.
Alter?
Yes.
Burgess?
Yes.
Dunn?
Yes.
Harmson?
Yes.
Motion passes 7-0. We are on to item number 10. 10A is Kratom Ban, Ordinance amending Title VI entitled Public Health and Safety to create a new Chapter 11 entitled Kratom to prohibit its sale and distribution. This is the second consideration. Could I get a motion, please?
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Dunn, seconded by Salah. And if you are in City Hall and you want to speak on this topic, please raise your hand. If you're online, please raise your virtual hand, and I'll call upon you. Okay. Welcome. And just to remind folks that this is an opportunity for you to speak to the council. The council will not be able to engage in discussion or debate, but the council may ask staff to respond to a concern or a question posed by the public or to follow up with the speaker afterward. The council can ask questions during their deliberations. Welcome.
Hey everybody, my name is Carolyn Sheriff Ryan. I live in Iowa City on Spencer Drive, and I hope I never have to move again. It's good to be back. I oppose this ban, and these are my reasons. My understanding of the law is that in order for this to be legal, the council needs to demonstrate that kratom is a threat to public health. I don't think the council has, and I don't think the council should try to do this. So far, it seems like all of the evidence has been mostly hearsay, anecdote, references to inconclusive data, and research that provides more questions than answers. So my first point is just the necessity to pass this ordinance in order to protect public health. It hasn't been demonstrated. I don't think that this will improve public health. The second reason that I oppose this ban is because of what we've learned from the war on drugs, which is that criminalizing the sale of a substance doesn't make it go away. It just pushes it to deeper and darker places. So banning the sale of kratom in Iowa City doesn't mean people in Iowa City will lose access to it. It just means that we all lose, you all lose, an opportunity to gain access to and engage with people who are using kratom. And I just want to invite you for a moment, and hopefully for further discussion, to think about what it would mean to have access to local stores and local people who buy and sell this substance. This is especially important, and this is why I'm here, because a real public health issue is the opiate epidemic. And research, including the research referenced in the Mayo, in the ordinance itself, you referenced Mayo. Some of the research cited there is a study of thousands of people who use kratom, and I think the number was 41% say they use it in lieu of using opiates, which can actually kill you and does kill people. In 2017, I lost 3 friends to the opiate epidemic. The state of Iowa lost about 300, and this last year, the state of Iowa lost 400, more than 400 people. So the opiate epidemic is the real issue, and it was alluded to at the last meeting or mentioned that there are barriers to the treatments that are recommended by the Mayo Clinic, et cetera, for opiate addiction. And people do use this substance, the research is there, as a way of reducing harm and fatalities. So in addition to having some personal experience with people who have died from the use of opiates, I also worked for a number of years in the homeless response system and worked with my clients on generating harm reduction related goals. For some people, the use of kratom helps them stay alive. So keep it above the table. Engage vendors and users in creative ways. Don't ban the sale.
Thank you. All right, we're going to go online. We're going to have Heidi come and speak, followed by Mac. Please state your name and city you're from. You'll have up to 3 minutes. Welcome, Heidi.
Hi, my name is Heidi Sephora. I'm a nurse practitioner and healthcare executive who had to retire early due to disability. I actually earned my doctorate in 2011, but by 2015, my severe pain and inability to stand longer than a few minutes made me leave the workplace. I was eventually diagnosed with several rare disorders that should have been diagnosed as a child, but were not. Chiari malformation, which basically means that my brain is outside my skull and puts a lot of pressure on my spinal cord. A tethered spinal cord also causes severe pain. Ehlers-Danlos hypermobility is a connective tissue disorder that causes pain. and hereditary alpha septicemia. Unfortunately, because of my brain condition, I'm very sensitive to pharmaceuticals, and I have not been able to find any pharmaceuticals that would help my pain. Thankfully, I was able to discover Kratom, and it has just been a real lifesaver for me. It reduces my pain without leading to the dizziness, confusion, and fatigue caused by oxycodone, and has really given me my quality of life back that helps me enjoy my children and my grandchildren. So I am actually want to say a little bit about the hardship that it causes when something is banned. My permanent home is in Wisconsin, but I have a second home in Illinois and have to travel frequently to Illinois so that I can have a quality of life. So I hope that you will consider the kind of hardship that is created with bans. And just like the last speaker talked about, that it really is a harm reduction tool, and it's also used by so many people like me that really need it for chronic severe pain. Without it, unfortunately, people can turn to other illicit drugs or even the prescribed drugs that have a much higher risk profile. So I thank you for your time and appreciate you hearing me tonight.
Thank you. Heidi, please state what city you're from.
I'm Grafton, Wisconsin, but I'm talking to you from Wakanda, Illinois.
Thank you.
So I have to travel between the two states because of the ban in Wisconsin.
Thank you. Welcome, Mac, and we'll have that followed by Susan.
Thank you, Mayor Teague and members of the council. My name is Mac Haddo. I'm the Senior Fellow on Public Policy with the American Kratom Association. We're based in Gainesville, Virginia, but we represent the more than 20 million Americans across the United States, including in Iowa City, who are consumers of Kratom products. I wanted to address two important issues. First is, in the last meeting, there was a discussion about how someone had expropriated the identities of Iowa City residents, and we have called upon through letters to you and filing a complaint with the police department to actually investigate this, because we believe that it's a serious issue. Even if it's a well-intentioned Kratom supporter that did that, it is inappropriate and wrong, and the public policy discussion should not be influenced inappropriately by that kind of activity. We hope that you will accept our request for this investigation, and we will fully cooperate. Secondly, in reviewing the materials that is before the council, I can tell you with certainty that most of what you are relying upon is outdated. And I would refer you to the Food and Drug Administration itself, which refused to testify in a federal court proceeding in 2024 under the orders of a federal judge on the question as to whether Kratom was dangerous or not in the course of a trial involving a import alert violation. And the judge wanted to know the severity of the sentencing that he was about to impose on this individual, who, by the way, was stone cold guilty of importing it inappropriately. But what the FDA said in an official communication to the court was that the FDA, have not yet come to a determination as to whether Kratom is dangerous or not. That's an important point, that even the FDA today cannot do that. We found out shortly after that court proceeding why. The FDA has conducted a safety study called a single ascending dose study, which looked at Kratom to determine whether or not humans could safely consume it. They expected that they would see serious adverse events at very small doses. They got to 12 grams, which is 12,000 milligrams of Kratom consumed in a 5-minute period, and all they observed was nausea, in both the placebo group and in the Kratom users. And the FDA, determined, and it's in writing and publicly available, that Kratom appears to be well tolerated at all dose levels. The Mayo Clinic merely repeats what the outdated information that they are getting from the FDA, And they have not done one study, but Johns Hopkins University does, the University of Florida has, all of that at the behest of the National Institute on Drug Abuse, which has spent more than $100 million in studying kratom. And their conclusion is kratom should be available today to Americans because it is a harm reduction tool. We hope you will listen to those messages of credible institutions, credible researchers, and not fall victim to outdated information, which even Assistant Secretary for Health Jawad said in rejecting the FDA's premise, it was based on embarrassingly poor evidence.
Thank you. And Mac, will you just state what city you're from? I know that you're with Kratom.
Right. We're based in Gainesville, Virginia, but as I mentioned, we represent consumers across the United States, including in Iowa City.
Yeah, thank you. We're going to have Susan speak, followed by Misty. Please state your name and city you're from.
Yes, I'm Susan Eppard, and I'm from Muskegon, Michigan.
Welcome.
Thank you. My 22-year-old son, Matthew, died from using kratom powder, which is the least potent form of kratom available in the United States. Kratom caused him to have a seizure, go into cardiac arrest, and die. His toxicology showed he had no prescription drugs, no street drugs, nor alcohol in his system, and that he had no underlying health conditions and was not epileptic. I am a member of the group Kratom Danger Awareness, created by a mom who lost her only child, and hundreds of our members have lost loved ones to kratom deaths. There is a Reddit Quitting Kratom that has over 40,000 people who have suffered from kratom addiction. All kratom is illegally imported into the United States by falsely labeling it as tea, fertilizer, incense, etc., and labeling it not for human consumption. The FDA continues to warn against using kratom. Their website shows they haven't changed their minds about kratom, and they are actively collecting information through the FDA Adverse Events Reporting System. Anyone can go there and view all the kratom poisonings, injuries, and deaths that have been reported to them. I have spoke with the FDA, and they are actively collecting information on every kratom product that is causing deaths. The American Kratom Association has over 40 kratom vendors advertising on their website of so-called GMP qualified, and several of them are involved in kratom wrongful death lawsuits. Kratom is dangerously similar to opiates and shouldn't be sold out of gas stations and smoke shops with unlimited supply to the consumer. I've been to hundreds of establishments that sell kratom, and when I ask, what is the dose and the side effects, most say they are not allowed to answer that question and tell me to search online. I also asked, is it possible to die from using kratom? And without exception, they all said no. My son was playing cards with his girlfriend, and he went into a seizure and fell on the floor and went into cardiac arrest. And she called me, and it took me about a half hour to get there. And when I got there, they said he's so sorry your son didn't make it. And it took a while for them to get him ready and let me go in and see him. And when I went in, he was still laying on the kitchen floor, still intubated. He was gray and cold and stiff, and I could tell he was no longer there.
Thank you, Susan.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you. We're going to call on Misty, followed by Bud. Please state your name and city you're from.
Hi, can you guys hear me okay?
Yes, welcome.
Hi, Mayor Teague and council members. My name is Misty Brown, and I'm a loud and proud kratom advocate from Colorado. I would just like to say that today is my son, my third child's birthday. He is turning 20 years old, and if I wouldn't have found kratom over 5 years ago, I would not be alive today to witness him turning 20 years old. He is also turning me into a grandma. I will be having a grandbaby here in a couple months. I myself was a victim to the overprescribing opioid epidemic. I was in chronic pain management for over 11 years. I got fired from my pain management doctor in April of 2019 because the government decided to get involved and tell the doctors how much and what they can prescribe to chronic pain patients. When I got fired, I picked up doing cocaine. June 2019 was when I watched that documentary, A Leaf of Faith, and I walked straight into a smoke shop the next day to buy Kratom. That is what you guys are trying to ban. You're trying to ban the sale of it, and that right there could be somebody's lifeline, somebody's life jacket to keep their head above addiction waters so that they can work on their whys of addiction like I have. Kratom is not similar to opiates. If it was, I would be begging, borrowing, stealing, and doing immoral things to get more when I run out. I only dose 1 teaspoon once a day. I take 1 to 4 days off every week. So once again, Kratom is not similar to opiates. It is my harm reduction tool. It is my chronic pain management answer. I can't pray my pain away. I will forever be dependent on something. But as far as addiction potential for me, no. Pure unadulterated Kratom is not addictive. It is just as addictive as coffee. And nobody bats an eye that people brag about being addicted to coffee. Why? Why is that? Because it's socially acceptable. The mainstream media and our government puts a bad name on Kratom. And unfortunately for some of you guys sitting up there, you fell for that. You fell for the mainstream media. So follow the science. Don't ban the sale of Kratom. Let that be somebody's lifeline to save their life. Allow them to walk into a smoke shop and buy what will potentially save them so they can be alive for their kids and grandkids. Thank you for allowing me to speak.
Thank you. Welcome, Bud, followed by Laura.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, welcome.
Thank you. I don't use Zoom very often, so I apologize. My name is Bud, and I have been consuming Kratom for over 7 years.
Please state what city you're from.
What city?
Yes, please.
Syracuse.
Welcome.
Syracuse, New York.
Great.
So I started taking drugs when I was 13 years old. I lived through a childhood that no child should have to live through. And I started stealing my father's pain pills when I was 13. And there were hundreds of extra pain pills in the house. So my father did not even know that I was stealing them. I spent 17 years doing any drug that you can think of. Heroin, crack, meth, Molly, if you name it, I've done it. And I have lost a lot of friends to opiates, a lot of young 20-year-old friends to opiates. I never thought that I would be the kind of person who could buy a house, keep a job, and I have 4 children, and those 4 children have a father in their life, a good father who takes care of them. And they have that father because of Kratom. Because without Kratom, I would be abusing some sort of substances. Now, it's not just illegal drugs that I've had issues with, it's also prescription drugs. When I found Kratom, I was going through withdrawals from Xanax that was prescribed to me. The amount of Xanax that was prescribed to me was 8 milligrams per day. And I don't know if you know how much Xanax that is. That is about 4 times the amount that an adult should be prescribed. So I was being overprescribed Xanax. I don't blame it on the doctor. I said to the doctor that the Xanax wasn't helping, so he gave me more. The withdrawals that I went through on Xanax were worse than any illegal drugs that I had gone through withdrawals on. And someone suggested that I try Kratom. And I tried Kratom, and 7 years later, I use Kratom responsibly. I don't overdo it. and my mental health is better than it has ever been in my life. And I will tell every single person that Kratom saved me. And I have talked to personally thousands of people who have said the same thing that I'm saying, that Kratom saved them. And the difference between Kratom and a drug, because Kratom is not classified as a drug.
Thank you, Bud.
It does not.
Thank you. Welcome, Laura, followed by Jennifer. Laura, please state your name and city you're from. You're on mute.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yes, welcome.
Okay, thank you. So my name is Laura Romney, and I'm from Layton, Utah, and I am a chronic pain patient and a 7-year Kratom consumer. I was actually on daily oxycodone for a few years and was able to transition off of oxycodone and only take Kratom to control my daily pain. And I'm here to please oppose that, the possible ban of taking this out of your retail establishments. As you've heard tonight, it's used to control pain, to reduce anxiety, and to obviously to stay off addictive drugs and things like heroin and other opiates. But I want to say, most importantly, these are symptoms that you just can't wish away. More than anything, I would love to be able to say that I took nothing. That would be, I would give my left kidney for that. But it's something I know that I'm going to need to rely on. I have an incurable disease called trigeminal neuralgia. And people that struggle with severe anxiety and then again addiction, they cannot just merely wish it away. They have to find something to help them. And the problem is we are in the middle of an opiate epidemic. And right now it's near impossible to get a pain medication prescription or a benzodiazepine prescription for anxiety. And so people are becoming suicidal. I follow a patient pain group where the administrator, she gets numerous letters a week of people literally ready to commit suicide because they don't have pain control. And a lot of are turning to the black market, which those pills are laced with fentanyl and other very dangerous substances. Another issue is mental health. My own daughter, she has severe ADHD, and she has been unable to fill her prescription this past month due to medication shortages. So it's for people like that are really relying on this as a lifeline. And, I live in the state of Utah, which has passed the Kratom Consumer Protection Act. In fact, there are 13 other states who have passed it. And so there is a correct way to do this. Instead of banning it, you need to have it regulated. The solution is not to, not to take it away, but to make sure it's not given to or not allowed to be sold to minors. It's properly tested and labeled. And so, I highly suggest you work with the American Kratom Association to try to get the, Kratom Consumer Protection Act passed in Iowa so that, the patients like myself and others that we've heard of tonight have access. And in closing, I received a text today. I'm actually in Tennessee tonight, but I received a text from my friend or my coworker who was a former commander of investigation for the state police in Utah. He's also a Kratom consumer for his pain. And he said to me, it was funny, I was landing and I saw his text. And he said, I rolled my ankle, and he said, I've been in so much pain. Thank you.
Yes.
Appreciate it.
Welcome, Jennifer, followed by Kevin.
Yes, thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak tonight. My name is Jennifer Gillis, and I reside in Memphis, Tennessee. I'm here this evening as an advocate for those in Iowa who may not be able to make it this evening to have their voices heard. But I just want to ask you to reconsider the ban on Kratom and instead focus on regulation. In 2005, I was diagnosed with transverse myelitis, the rare condition that lets me to live the rest of my life not only with physical limitations, but also chronic pain. Over the next decade, I tried all kinds of different pain management techniques, along with numerous prescription and over-the-counter medications in attempt to just manage my pain to live. But nothing really alleviated my suffering. My life was confined by pain, leaving me unable to be the mom that I wanted to be, the wife, or even just the person I wanted to be. In May of 2019, I found Kratom, and for the past 5 years, I've used it responsibly, and it's given me a second chance at life. My physical limitations are still present, but the constant pain that used to control my life is no longer my reality. I can get out of bed, run errands, attend school functions, and live somewhat of a normal life. I understand Kratom has a lot of controversy around it, but I agree, safety is important. And so instead of an outright ban, I encourage you to look into regulation. An outright ban would strip adults of the freedom to make informed, educated decisions about our health. Kratom has been a lifeline for people like me, offering relief where other treatments have failed. Please don't take this lifeline. Regulate it, ensure safety, but don't ban it. Thank you so much for your time tonight.
Thank you. We have 2 more speakers. I'm going to actually ask Michael to come before we hear from Kevin. Welcome, Michael. Please state your name and city you're from. We can't hear you. You're on mute.
Hello, my name is Michael Rivera. I'm from Des Moines, Iowa. I'm speaking on behalf of the people in Iowa City that consume Kratom. I've been a consumer of Kratom for the past 6 years.
So, Michael, we can't hear you. So the reason I called up Michael is because I saw that he kept going in and out. So he may have a bad connection. Welcome, Kevin. Please state your name and city you're from.
My name is Kevin Mumm. I'm from Wade Park. A ban on Kratom is ridiculous. The leading Kratom experts in the United States recommend access. The citizens of Iowa City, including but not limited to nurses, construction workers, athletes, use it to relieve their pain and live a fully functional life without using opioids. Banning Kratom will leave their citizens seeking alternatives like opioids, opening the risk of dependency and death. If you haven't forgotten, we're in the midst of an opioid crisis that is killing hundreds of thousands every year. A research study by Jack Henningfield and PubMed says overdose deaths are greater than 1,000 times for opioids than for Kratom. If an opioid user would switch to Kratom, nearly all of those lives would be saved. We know that death by Kratom isn't accurate. We know that fentanyl and novel psychoactive drugs are not routinely being tested for and have been found to be the true cause of death after further testing. The World Health Organization studied Kratom and found that less than 1% of cases of Kratom reported events into the United States poison data system were medically serious. The World Health Organization also found that Kratom was not the primary cause in the vast majority of Kratom-associated deaths, but rather was an incidental finding. Thank you.
Thank you. Michael hasn't come back, but Michael, if you do return within the next few seconds, I will allow you to continue your comments. I'm going to close the public comment period. Now, council discussion.
Well, I know some of you have kind of heard my position on this before, but for the benefit of my fellow council members who weren't able to be here for the last meeting, I do support this ban for a couple of reasons. One is certainly because of the FDA warning saying that this is a substance of concern. And that's, you know, to me, that is one piece of the puzzle that I think is important. One is because just sort of thinking about it logically, when we have so many claims about this particular substance, kratom, and claims are that it can help deal with various testimony we've heard over several weeks, alcoholism, opioid addiction, anxiety, depression. If those claims are true, then that indicates to me that this is a substance that has some sort of significant and profound effect on the human body. Otherwise, it wouldn't have any impact. This would just be, we'd be talking about a placebo effect. But there is, again, sort of that lack of understanding and full research that this is a safe product. And we do have, so it's kind of like if you can, to me, it's like kind of wanting to have it both ways. It's significant and it helps people, but we don't really know why and how, and we can't really say for sure. And then to make the claim that it has these impacts but doesn't have some side effects just seems really, seems on its face not super, I don't find that to be super credible, super believable. And then adding in the fact that I haven't heard anything about any actual doctors or people who do, actual medical drug rehab sorts of things that are prescribing this as a substance. So that raises questions in my mind as well. More specifically, one of the other reasons too I support a ban on the sale of this in our city is because of something that came up kind of during our discussion of the tobacco ordinance when we heard from the county public health, and that is the prevalence of the advertising and the impact the advertising has, especially on young people as they walk past tobacco shops, walk into and past convenience stores and things like that, where these are, advertised in great big lights. The reason you have advertising is in order to convince people to buy whatever the product is. And so I do see from like a public health standpoint and a public health thinking about the impact of not just the substance, but the marketing of the substance being so prevalent in our community and all these places that sell tobacco and other places. Those are actually pretty grave concerns for me. And so those are important to me. And then, some of the stuff that was raised by some of our colleagues at the last meeting, including the identity theft that had happened in the flood of emails that had come our way by people claiming to be in favor of kratom and not indeed being those people. And the Councilor Moe was sharing with us the recent obituary of an Iowa City resident who passed away back on August 30th. And in this thing from her family, and again, understanding that I don't have the medical examiner's report on this, but whatever happened to take this poor 45-year-old woman's life early and leaving behind two children, by the way, a 17-year-old and a 10-year-old, here's what the family published in the paper. In lieu of flowers, consider donating some time to write your state or federal congressional representative to raise awareness of kratom, the legal yet unregulated drug which took Liz's life and made 2 orphans, and then some instructions on how to contact a federal representative. Now, again, all of these are pieces which to me add up to the conclusion that it is in the public health interest of our city to vote to ban the sale of this. Now, should there be some state regulation or further stuff that indicates that, yes, indeed, this should be something we should be selling, that's fine, but we as a city don't have the ability to do that kind of work. But if the state or a federal agency like the FDA were to do that, then I would absolutely reconsider.
Thank you, Councilor Harms, and I agree that our state legislators need to take this seriously and need to be regulating this in the way that they have the tools to regulate this, and that's making sure that what is seen in stores is actually what's advertised, to make sure it's not adulterated, to make sure it's not some of these synthetic components that are very, very, very much stronger than traditional kratom, and to make sure that they're not sold to children. And that's something our state legislature needs to do. We had people call in from different states today who, I believe them when they say it helped. But they also, many of them live in states that have regulation that restricts age, regulation that ensures that the product is actually what it's advertised to be. And so I'll be supporting this. And if our state does its job and starts regulating, I'm happy to think differently.
I didn't have the benefit of being here last meeting, but I'll just cut to the chase. This feels like really dramatic overreach to me, and I think what bothers me is the lack of evidence that you were just speaking to, Councilor Harmson, and to me the conclusion from that is not prohibit it. The lack of evidence to me says we are not the best people to be regulating. We are not the best people to be deciding. And I think what was dispositive for me is, in looking at the tobacco ordinance changes that we appear to be on the way to, well, I guess I don't know if we're actually going to adopt them, but that's my sense, is that this is something the council is interested in doing once we get to our first reading. That the Kratom ban is really something else insofar as we don't have a staff recommendation, and we have unknown fiscal impact. It was indicated in the memo that the fiscal impact would be none from, passing the ordinance banning it, but there would have to be some kind of enforcement mechanism, even if it's just the city attorney issuing municipal citations or the police, charging misdemeanors, which are the two potential punishments for a violation. So even if we have, it's just complaint-based or something like that, if we don't have a really active, robust enforcement mechanism, there will be a cost to our staff. There will be a cost to, it just feels like if it were very, very clearly very dangerous and this was our only tool in the toolbox, I think I would support it. But I agree that, from a harm reduction standpoint and a state legislature makes the most sense to be enacting that. Like, we are just not experts on this, and I don't think the science is clear. So I'm not going to be supporting the ban.
And I'm just going to follow up. I was against the ban in our last meeting, and Councilor Burgess said it much more eloquently than me this time around to summarize where my objections have been, but we don't know its impact. I do believe heartily in the fact that not everyone has access to the doctors and the access to more established means of getting off of drugs or of pain management, and I just think it's a lot of overreach. I really do. We don't know. The FDA, well, we might tout them, and I mean this with respect, they are toothless. They have had so much money taken away. So I'm not thinking that they're cutting edge and that actually Kratom is on their radar as much. Anyway, I'm not supporting this. I'm going to be consistent. I don't believe that the city should be regulating what individuals do to this extent.
I think that this is something that I definitely struggle with. As council's probably aware, a lot of this does stem from conversations that I started during the broader discussion around the tobacco ordinance and work on that. I'm put in a position where it's difficult for me to get to a comfortable spot. This is one of those votes that it doesn't feel like we have a good place to land, at least for me, because I can recognize all the things that Councilor Harmson says as I think fundamentally good interpretations of the way the land lays. And at the same time, acknowledge that there is an abundance of people who the product, they seem to think that it helps them. That's not necessarily the most important thing in terms of our decision-making process. We have to think about the broader health of the community, understanding various predatory marketing tactics that companies that produce the product utilize, the companies that sell the product utilize. Those are all of concerns, as well as purity of the product, and I completely understand, and I think that it's a valid, important argument that needs to be made towards the broader safety of our community. Where I think I began in this broader conversation was a position of, this is a substance that has some real concern. And I think that everyone here can probably acknowledge that it is concerning. It's not absolute bad, it's not absolute good, but it is concerning. The regulatory agencies say so as well. And for, however you want to take that. In light of that, I definitely believe that, at first, I agreed with the sentiment that the city is incapable of creating a satisfactory regulatory regime, and I still do believe broadly that is the case. We cannot create a regulatory regime that mandates purity, safety, or in any other way really determines for a matter of medical fact, or scientific fact for that matter, safe usage standards and requirements and regulations for this substance. I, at that time, believed that, okay, if we can't do that, if we can't go all the way and create the regulation that could be acceptable, the alternative is a ban. I don't necessarily know that I believe that to be the case anymore. Through my conversations with members of the community, as well as Councilor Alter, I think what at least I would support at this moment is more conformity with our tobacco regulations. So like a parallel system of regulations and permitting, a verifiable age regulation for sale, and then, should we get some more solid data, we can continue to act in the future, or the federal government or state government will act and supersede us. I think that a large focus of this broader conversation surrounding tobacco and kratom has been highly focused on minimizing the impacts to young people. And I think that to my goals and perspectives of the situation, conformity with the tobacco regulations, or uniformity with the tobacco regulations, would achieve that. Yeah, I'm interested in hearing if other people would be interested in that, or what thoughts people have, because that would have to be a motion. That would also have to be a lot of other actions, and council's proclivities will affect the decision that I ultimately make.
I think that we had discarded, you can correct me if I'm wrong, regulating them like cigarettes for a couple reasons. Primarily amongst them is the state provides us money to do compliance checks for tobacco. And the state also makes sure that cigarettes are as they're labeled. And the state has all these kind of rules about age and marketing. And in that arena, the state has set up a system that I think we all accept. But without really knowing what's being sold or having a system to pay for compliance, I agree with you. I can see a future where we regulate it like cigarettes, like regulate it like alcohol, like our neighbors regulate marijuana. Like, I can imagine that being the right way in the future. But because we don't have a state that's a participant right now in this conversation, I'm erring on safety, and that we we need them to act. And maybe they will if we can get the industry to sort of say, oh wow, bans aren't good. We need to work on the state legislature to regulate.
Mm-hmm.
I think the regulation is of concern when we're talking about the ban. How will it be enforced? And then, yes, there will be some cost, some staff time associated with this. I'm not too worried about that part of it, but if we did have the other regulations that you kind of just alluded to, I still feel there'll be some, probably even more involvement from the city on this. It is not an easy decision, but I have to say that since this has been a controversial thing, which I did not know a lot about, and it's really sweeping the nation, there are children and there are people, consuming this, and there are bad actors out there. And I know we can't control all of that. We don't know what's in any of the products in any of the stores. And so I do feel that it's a public health safety issue. And for that reason, I'm going to be voting for the ban, while I also hope that there will be more definitive things coming from either our state legislature on this particular item. But for me, I will be supporting the ban.
I heard a lot of positive. To begin with, I really wasn't know about this at all. The first time I learned about it this year at the council meeting, and I have to go and read a lot about it. And I saw a lot of negative things about, like, reports there. And also Sean mentioned that the FDA have a warning about it. And we just heard also a woman from Michigan. She was talking about how her son passed away. And to me, I cannot say it's bad or it's good, because I don't have that expert. But if there is 1%, it could be bad things for the people of the city, I will not go with it. That's why, because of some people say yes, some people say no, I rather go with Band-Aid. And if it turns back to be good, and as Council, Judge Moore said, and Handsome, if the regulations by the state, they decided to talk about this and do it, we can come back all the time. So I will be supporting yes for the ban.
I appreciate that there are 4 of my colleagues who've indicated they want to support the ban. I do just want to zoom out for a minute and just say that it's very concerning to me that we would step into a regulatory space because of something that could cause harm in a small percentage of cases. There are so many things that fit into that category, if that's how we're going to define when we step into something, that's very troubling to me. I appreciate the arguments of my colleagues, and I hope that we will not apply that standard as deciding the issue for prohibiting the sale of other kinds of things, because there's so many things that can be misused and cause harm that I just don't think we have the expertise or the appropriate purview to prohibit in our community.
I think to clarify just a couple of points on that, to make sure that I'm being understood. With some of these other things that I think you're probably alluding to, a couple of different situations. There's a different situation with Kratom here. One of them is the FDA warning that it's a substance of concern, right? I think that's the phrase, or it's something equivalent to that. So that's something we don't have on any substance out there. And that's, so it's not just like there's a lack of research and we don't know if it's safe or not. It's a little bit different than, it's a little bit more than that. And we actually have some reasons to believe it may not be safe, and reasons that are coming from the FDA. Some other substances like tobacco, for example, or alcohol, both of which we've talked about tonight, actually do have a regulatory structure that, so there is, even though you could certainly make the argument about, what the relative risks of these different substances, yet that has been taken sort of out of our hands. So to me, looking at this as just from our city, when I look at this, it's like, okay, so we have this substance, and really, I think you hit the nail on the head, even though I think we're coming down on different sides. Do we allow, since the question is before us, do we allow the sale of something there might be instances of concern, but we aren't for sure, or do we wait for it to be? Do we wait for that question to be cleared up to allow it, or do we wait for that question to be cleared up to ban it? Which is really kind of the issue that we have before us, at least the way I see it. And so I think, if I'm, hopefully not putting too many words in your mouth, I think probably we're just coming down on the opposite sides of the same coin there.
Yeah.
And that's why. It's not just sort of a random thing. There's, to me, like some of the stuff like the FDA concerns are relevant, some of these other concerns that have been brought up. And then, of course, the marketing to kids. That's one thing that, to me, would be a benefit, is immediately, at least in Iowa City, they could no longer market and sell. And to me, that's a value that I see, but I can see that, that might still feel like overreach, and I respect that opinion. So.
And also, I think, like, we cannot be talking about tobacco and, like, kids far away from the school and all these things that we've been talking about for the tobacco. And correct me if I'm wrong, but I hear that even for the Kratom, there is no even age restriction. And this is to me, and I hear that from the people who are using it and say, like, it helped me, like, relieve my pain. It helped me doing that. Just think about it, like, children go and just buy that and start using it. I think they will, even if they not having a pain or anything, they just want to, like, try it, and after that they become addicted to it. This is really just, that's really scary. That's why I'm against this.
I know that we have regulations in place through the feds and state about alcohol and tobacco, and we have talked about it in terms of how we can mitigate the exposure to children and teens about this. And yet, both of those substances are proven to kill and to be detrimental. There is no good outcome for either one of these things, right? Recreation at best. And both substances absolutely are corollary, maybe not with, there's certainly overdoses, there's cancer, but also with all assaults, burglaries, poor judgment. And I'm not railing at any, it's the conversation. I want everyone to understand that I'm not railing against my fellow counselors. But I'm just very frustrated because at the same time, and I've heard it a couple of times, we don't know anything really about it. This is the first time that we're hearing about it. So let's make a call about it. And we have had, yes, it is qualitative evidence, not quantitative, although I've been looking at indications of overdoses. They're very small. They're usually in conjunction with people who have opioid substance abuse history, and that those are also part of what's in their bodies. So I guess I'm just frustrated with the sort of notion of saying, well, we're being really good about how we're going to understand tobacco, and we've also done it in the past with alcohol to mitigate harm. Here, this is a substance of concern. It is not proven, perhaps, that there's this groundswell of kratom addiction that's even floating through our own, this came to us because it was sort of part of a larger umbrella discussion. It didn't come because, oh my God, the police are coming to us telling us kratom is running rampant. It was a suggestion that sounded like a good idea in the moment. And we don't know that much about it. We are not a medical body. We are a policy entity, and I think it's overreach, and I think the idea that we don't know about it makes it good enough for us to say, until we know more, no. I have a huge problem with that. So thank you for indulging me, my frustration, but, and I respect each and every one of you, but I can't go there. I just can't, and I'm frustrated that this even came up.
Sure. Yeah.
Any other comments by counselors? Roll call, please.
Sutton?
Yes.
Teague?
Yes.
Alter?
No.
Burgess?
No.
Dunn?
No.
Harmson?
Yes.
Mo?
Yes.
Motion passes 4-3. Could I get a motion to accept correspondence?
Second.
Moved by Salah, seconded by Alter. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion passes 7-0.
Mayor, I don't think we got a motion for correspondence under 9B.
Okay, great.
Get one for that.
Move to accept correspondence for 9B.
Second.
All right. So I didn't, who, could I get a motion to accept correspondence?
That's me.
Who moved it?
That's me.
All right, done, seconded by Salah. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes 7-0. All right, and we are on to announcements of vacancies previous. 11A, Board of Adjustment, 1 vacancy to fill a 5-year term. Climate Action Commission, 3 vacancies to fill a 3-year term. Human Rights Commission, 1 vacancy to fill an unexpired term. Human Rights Commission, 2 vacancies to fill a 3-year term. Parks and Recreation Commission, 2 vacancies to fill a 4-year term. Public Art Advisory Committee at large, 1 vacancy to fill a 3-year term. Senior Center Commission, 2 vacancies to fill a 3-year term. Applications will be received by 5 p.m. Must be received by 5 p.m. Tuesday, November 12th, 2024. Airport Zoning Board of Adjustment, 1 vacancy to fill a 5-year term. Airport Zoning Commission, 1 vacancy to fill a 6-year term. Board of Appeals HVAC Professional, 1 vacancy to fill an unexpired term. Historic Preservation Commission Jefferson Street, 1 vacancy to fill a 3-year term. Historic Preservation Commission Woodlawn Avenue, 1 vacancy to fill an unexpired term plus a 3-year term. Vacancies will remain open until filled. We are on to item number 12, which is City Council information.
I just want to note one really quick thing. It's just, I think it's a nice connection for our ongoing work, is that actually I applied for and was appointed onto the Empowerment and Early Childhood Iowa Area Board. So,
Congratulations.
yeah, so it's exciting, and I get onboarded on Thursday. So I like the notion of us being able to sort of continue a way to know more about what's going on in terms of early childcare.
I just want to say thank you to the police department. I did a ride-along, and it was a really wonderful opportunity to see our police department collaborate with Johnson County Ambulance, as well as helping someone get to GuideLink, which is working and helping people and keeping people out of jail and getting the help they need. So it was an inspiring evening. So thanks to the department for their good work.
Oh, you did. I've been trying to do that for the past 7 years, 5 years or 7 years.
It's fun.
Yeah, I will do it.
I mentioned this during the work session, but since this is possibly a different audience, online anyway, the Iowa City Book Festival is underway, and will be continuing through the weekend in several locations, mostly around downtown Iowa City, including the Iowa City Public Library, Merge, Prairie Lights, and other venues. Highly encourage people to check out the website. Just do a Google search on Iowa City Book Festival. There are a lot of authors who will be in town talking about their books and having discussions, and members of the public, it's free to come in and see that. There'll also be some panel discussions. And since we are a UNESCO City of Literature, and we have a lot of people who really vibe on that, the whole idea of literature and books, this is a wonderful event, and encourage anyone to check out some of it over the next several days.
All right, we're going to move on to item number 13, reports on items from city staff, city manager's office.
Nothing tonight, Mayor. Thank you.
City attorney's office.
Me neither, thank you.
All right, city clerk.
Just another reminder for the police or Community Police Review Board's community forum tomorrow night at the Iowa City Library, Room A at 5:30.
Great. Awesome. We're on to item number 14. Can I get a motion to adjourn, please?
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Burgess, seconded by Sala. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? We are adjourned.